thank you very much. And I'd also like to acknowledge too, we have the ladies from the Ballina CWA here today. I come from a country town in Queensland from a single parent family where the CWA was always incredibly supportive of our family. I grew up in domestic violence. This issue is really close to me, and I've lived in domestic violence. And I know I was approached without any knowledge of my history, but more of a knowledge of my feminism. But my feminism comes from a deep history of what it was like to grow up in a country town with no support, nothing. There was nowhere for us to go. I was 6 when my father died. And when people say they're sad for you when your parent dies, that was my liberty as a kid. That got us out of that situation. But it also meant we never got the care that we should have had. It was normalised. People didn't intervene. It was seen as a private problem. What happens to a child when they come out of domestic violence is, unless you actually get the counselling and the support that you need, very often you'll go on in your own life to sometimes be more likely to live that through again. I later went on in my 20s to live in a situation of domestic violence. I was a woman who went to the police and then I never turned up in court. I know the shame that lives with you when you yourself as a feminist is that woman who didn't stand up, who went back. I went back many, many times until I was strong enough to leave. And once again, didn't get the counselling and the support. I went and sought it myself as an older woman because it wasn't until then that I realised. And I'm telling you this from the inside because I'm telling you why. It's about having a safe place, but it's about more than having a safe place. It's about being able to step back into your life, and you do that with support. If government doesn't stand up and put money, into restoring, liberty and equity and hope and change into the lives of our community members, into the lives of those women, into the lives of those children, we are in dire situation if that is the case, and that is where we live. When you come out of a situation of domestic violence, you are in trauma. You are often in a regional area. You are often isolated from your friends. There's so many stories going around. You have to start from ground zero to build yourself up again. Now you try and do that as a traumatized woman with traumatized children, trying to access services, trying to find your way to Centrelink, trying to find where you can get your birth certificate again to prove who you are so you can get some money. And then to have to go out there and try and get a house. Are you kidding? Doing that on your own? That sends women back into violence, because sometimes you go back because it's easier living there than it is being out in a community as a traumatized person without support. When we know that one woman dies every week, at least one woman dies every week, and some weeks, many weeks, we don't even hear the name of that woman or the story of that woman. They're anonymous women because the level of care, I believe, is so low. So that is why it's incredibly important that we find the funding for the Ballina Women and Children's Refuge, because we've got to send a message to women in our community and to children in those families that they are important and they are valued and that we care about them and that we want to see their lives restored. And we need to be a safe community, and that means making a place for women and children to recover from the trauma of domestic violence and step again into their lives. And I think for me, that's incredibly important. I know the difference for me. I feel really lucky to be here where I am. And it's very funny. It's often people will say, it's quite funny, it's a lot of community views that have to shift. I've had very, very sort of, I guess, feminist women say to me, I would never have thought you were one of those sorts of women. And I went, wow, what does that say about how we perceive women in that situation? If you haven't got the lived experience, it's very hard to understand what happens and how you are eroded. But I'll say even someone as strong and feisty as me reached a point where I could not get out, where I was covered in bruises and I didn't go to court, where I did things that went completely against my values because I was emotionally demolished from living in what is an incredibly traumatizing and shameful, so shameful experience. But I recovered because of my community and because of my support that I had around me. I would love to see us, we're talking about having a working party, and thanks so much to having Janelle and Tamara and Catherine here. It is around bipartisan support across politics because it doesn't matter what flag you fly. It's irrelevant when it comes to this issue. We as women have to unite. We as women say that this is not acceptable and we demand change. I think we've been too quiet, too compliant, and we've acquiesced for too long. I think it's okay to get angry. It's okay to stand up. It's okay to say that's enough. And part of that is caretaking for our community who are impacted by domestic violence. Let's get that message out there. Let's try and advocate and push for funding at a governmental level for the refuge. But of course, we'll fundraise as well. I had an idea last night when I was sort of lying in bed, not able to go to sleep. I thought, I run Comedy Geeks, so I knew the Cove was next to the Ballina RSL. I've done it for 14 years. We could easily put on a women's comedy night with great women comedians. And we could raise 10, 15,000 pretty quickly, I reckon, on this, get 300-400 people in there. So let's get that happening. That's an idea that I'll put forward, that I'll get happening. If we all have a few ideas and said that would be great. Let's also keep this conversation going. So thank you. Push on.